I'm a good communicator. I'm direct and to the point. Take it or leave it. Hey, look, I'm a straight shooter. What you see is what you get. These are phrases that a lot of women say, and they think it means they are good communicators. But we're going to dig a little deeper and talk about how, if you learn to communicate softer, you'll actually be a better communicator. Welcome to the Secret Formula of Femininity for women who want to live a more feminine, fun, and fabulous life. I'm Dr. Nicole Montero, your host on this weekly journey to unlocking your inner radiance, nurturing fulfilling relationships, and becoming the best version of yourself. Welcome back to another episode of the Secret Formula of Femininity, where we explore the timeless value of your feminine essence. Today, we're going to be looking specifically at the value of soft communication and how it can actually enhance your romantic relationships as well as other relationships in your life. And I've been looking at some of the research from communications experts because I think communication is one of those buzzwords as well that we hear a lot. And a lot of times we can be fooled into thinking that we're good at it, even though no one has necessarily taught us the principles of effective communication, connecting communication, and communication that facilitates intimacy and closeness in particular in your relationship. So we're going to talk about that. And you heard in the intro some of those key phrases, and that relates to the story that I want to tell you. And this time, the story is not necessarily about my journey, but it's a compilation or an amalgamation of stories from women that I have heard throughout my work and just talking to people, being out and about talking to people. And those phrases, such as I'm a straight shooter, what you see is what you get, take it or leave it, those all are things that I'm sure we have heard women say. And a lot of women think, and a lot of people, but I'm talking particularly to women in terms of their relationships. They feel that being direct to the point, that is the only way to be assertive or confident in their communication. And what they find though, and end up being perplexed, is that leads to a lot of misunderstandings. I'm going to give this fictional woman that is like a compilation of many women I've talked to. I'm going to give her the name Brenda. And so Brenda comes to me and she says, I don't get it. I'm very clear. I'm confident in myself. I know what I want to say. I know what I mean. And it's no holds barred with me. I tell it like it is. I'm a straight shooter. And I don't understand why I'm not getting the results I want. Why is it that my partner feels like I'm too harsh? Or why is it that he shuts down when I start doing my straight shooting? Why is it that I'm not getting anything back when I'm simply just saying how I feel? Right. So Brenda tends to be confused about the impact, not just of her words. I think Brenda often focuses on her words because she feels like I'm confident. I have put thought into what I want to say. I'm trying to be clear. Brenda feels like she's being intentional and she doesn't understand why the what is the impact that she's having that is the opposite of what she wants, right? She wants to communicate because we've all been told that communication lets people know how you feel. That makes them want to communicate with you. But what Brenda finds is that she's focused so much on what she's saying that she forgets that how she says it is as much of a factor in the response that she's going to get. So her man is shutting down because she is shooting so straight. And no one has told her the secrets of femininity around the different tones, the different notes that we strike when we communicate. So if you think about communication almost as a musical piece, like you're in an orchestra, it's a song, and you're playing a song that you want to trigger your partner. Let's talk about relationships here. You want that person to dance. You want them to respond to the song. You know how there are songs that we just have an emotional response to, or we love that song, and we can pick it apart and say why, because it's this singer, I love that beat, but it's the whole thing put together that is beyond just what words can explain. And we have a connection to it. Usually it evokes certain emotions, and we have an emotional connection to it. So Brenda never learned, as a secret of femininity, that your communication has to be well rounded, that you have to think about your communication, especially in your relationship, as like you composing a song. And it's not just the words. Imagine a song where someone just recited the words, like even a hip hop song or any kind of song, any genre. If it was just about one instrument playing certain notes, or if it was just about the words and someone just reciting them with no rhythm, no beat or anything, right? Then it would be like no one would take that in. It doesn't matter how great the words are. The packaging is not making people attached to it. So you want to think about your communication in the same way. How are you packaging it? Is it appealing? And let's talk about in your relationship. Does it make your partner want to lean in and know more and be curious and put their defenses down so that they can be vulnerable? Or is it communication that is signaling, I don't have empathy, I'm not really worried about what you have to say or how it makes you feel, and it makes just unconsciously the person put their defenses up? That's what soft communication is about. It's about learning how to differentiate or tell the difference between just a bunch of words and a song that can really get at the heart of what you're trying to express, but also for your partner to be able to be open to taking it in. And ultimately, you want your partner to be able to not just understand you, but like respond. You want it to be a back and forth. You want it to flow. I'm assuming at least all of the Brendas that I have talked to, the compilation of these women, they have wanted their conversations and their communication to flow. They have wanted to feel like they could say something even if it was difficult and feel safe enough, or have their partner feel safe enough where he could listen, and that they could also um, say something vulnerable, and that Brenda could open up and share more of herself. Now, Brenda didn't say it to me like that, but I got the point. She was like, basically, Doc, why is it that I'm talking and it's like nobody's responding? He's shutting down. He doesn't seem really invested. And then Brenda starts going and overthinking, and she's in her head, and she's getting mad and resentful. She's mad at her partner, she's mad at herself, and she's starting to feel defeated and deflated. And all of that is basically due to Brenda's ignorance, what she doesn't know and wasn't taught about communication. And also, not just ignorance, but miseducation. What she was told was the best way. So, a lot of women, especially women who were raised to be strong and independent and get things done and ambitious and, just able, high achieving in some ways, they were told that you always have to be direct, you have to be to the point, sometimes blunt, like take it or leave it. What are some of the phrases? I'm telling it like it is. You can, you need to be tough enough to take this. And especially some of the gender dynamics in relationships, women will feel like when they're talking to their man that he needs to be able to take it like that. And so there's been a lot of misinformation about the difference between direct communication, being blunt and to the point, versus learning a more nuanced communication that includes more softness, more being attuned and understanding your partner, especially in your relationship, But there's other places as well where a softer, more nuanced communication will be effective. I can't tell you how many times I've needed something special done from a manager or customer service. Or look, I learned some of this when I was in college and undergrad. I went to Howard University. Hey, HU. But let me tell you, the administration and the things you had to deal with, it was so, at least when I went, antiquated. It was I won't call, well, let me just say it was about relationships. So you could walk in all you want and think that somebody was going to look in the computer and just give you some objective information. But if you miss the part of how you need to really connect with that person and get them to want to help you, like that was something that you needed to know in order to get through the administration at Howard University. Okay, now nobody come for me because that was my experience. And so many of my friends and I at the time, we just would talk about that. So you learn skills where having a more nuanced communication. It's the difference between getting what you need done versus coming in, being blunt to the point, and turning everybody off. And they're just not that invested in helping you get what you need, get your objective done. So, soft communication is applicable to so many situations, but particularly in your relationship. So, we always have to define things because a lot of femininity and feminine energy and tapping into your feminine essence, because it's this timeless thing, it's like it's so natural in some ways. It can seem very simple where people want to discount it, and then certain terms get overused and we forget the definition of those terms. So let's define, what is soft communication. It's basically a way, it involves expressing your thoughts and feelings in a gentle, respectful, and empathetic manner. So it's about using certain skills like active listening, learning to speak more kindly, being mindful of the impact of your words and the tone of your words on others. So it's really getting at the definition of communication being a two-way street. So it's not just what I want to say and the words I'm using. Soft communication prioritizes understanding and connection over winning an argument, proving a point. Some of the things that have been so uh, promoted and emphasized in our social media age, it's like it's always about a clap back, letting somebody know, telling somebody off, winning an argument, having the people around you cheer you on for winning this argument. Now, I'm not saying that there is never a place for something like that. Sometimes you may be in a hostile environment and you need to assert yourself in a certain way. But far too often, it is a tool. That harsh, direct communication is a tool that is overused. It's like the hammer, it's the proverbial hammer that a person brings out, like an unskilled, let's just say an unskilled carpenter will use a hammer for every single thing, and he's tearing up stuff because the hammer is too harsh. The hammer, yes, we all need that. I teach my kids there are times when it's a hard stop. No, the tone of voice changes, the look on your face, right? But far too often, we have missed the subtleties of soft communication. We've lost the skill of that, of active listening, being more kind with our words and our tone, being curious and inviting the other to also share what they want to share, and being mindful of the impact of what you say, because the impact could either work in your favor or work against you. Anybody who's been to any of like your local municipality, or yeah, one time I had to go to the water department to get some clerical error fixed, but the person who was standing between me and getting this thing fixed either had an attitude, maybe they had a bad day. I really don't know. But all I knew is if I went in like a bulldozer, then that person was going to out bulldoze me because they were already in a bad mood. So I had to learn to use subtle, soft communication, being mindful of it's okay to be assertive and be clear about what I want to say, but also recognizing that I needed to get this person on my side to want to help me. So there are so many different examples of this, but essentially think about it. Being mindful and uh, caring about the impact of what you say on other people, working on your empathy and understanding. And the way you do that is just being more curious. Because I was thinking to myself with that example, going to the water department, I wonder how many other people came in before me and were just rude to her or demeaned her, or maybe her supervisor is micromanaging and making her feel, like whatever. Now, I didn't say these things to her, but I tried to imagine that there's some way that maybe she's feeling um, unseen, unheard, unappreciated, demeaned. And how can I approach her in a way that gives her the opposite feeling so that she will then want to help me, right? You get what I'm saying? And so think about that in your relationship. A lot of times we know our partners, we've been together, even if you're looking for a relationship, right? It's so easy once you know someone, once the novelty or the newness wears off, to start to take somebody for granted. It is so easy to start to feel like you know this person and you don't have to put in the same effort. And that is usually when we start to, that's the beginning of the end of curiosity. It's the beginning of the end of being more mindful of the impact of what we say and how we're saying it on them. And so the soft communication is just a reminder. Gentleness is okay. You can get your point across without being so sharp. Like when I hear people say, I'm blunt and to the point, it's like there's a sharpness. And I've been on the receiving end of that. And I can tell you something, the emotions that evokes are very different than the emotions of someone who's clear, who's confident, who may have some difficult things to say, but they're mindful of how they're saying it. And I'd much rather latch on to the latter, like the one who is mindful of how they're saying it. Usually, a person and a Brenda, for example, who is very sharp, direct, blunt, take it or leave it, I'm telling it like it is, that person underneath tends to be very sensitive. That person was probably is either modeling or what they've seen or in a defense mechanism mode because someone has treated them like that, usually when they were younger, right? A lot of this comes back to our experiences when we were younger, how we may have felt overlooked, unheard, discounted. And I'm going to get to the unheard part in a minute. But that blunt, direct, and to the point version of Brenda is often someone who's modeling what they've seen, or they're in a protective, defensive mode because that's what they have experienced with someone doing to them. So they may feel like they've been in an environment, and there's different cultural norms. But you may have been in an environment where you feel like you had to be on the defense, you had to be hard, or else you would be seen as weak and you would be at risk for being taken advantage of. So essentially, you were in survival mode. Now, with cultural differences, when there's cultural differences, it's more of a collective understanding. People understand within the culture that's how it is. But what I'm talking about is situations also where a person, their individual experience had to put them in survival mode or protective mode because they were not protected. No one ever talked softly to them. I've met women who said their mom, for example, the other woman in their life, was very harsh to them, impatient, never had time. So they adopted that as like that's how you show you're about business. That's how you show that you're taking care of someone, is that you're direct, you're blunt. There's no time. Um, I'm going to give you an example, right? Sometimes when you go to a fast food restaurant in the drive-through, this has happened to me. If you don't know exactly what you want or you have a question about something, it's like there's no time. Get to the point. Do you want a meal one, two, or three? And I don't want to hear anything else, right? So, how many of us want to go into our relationships or other interactions in life where that's our experience? Where it's, get to the point. I'm impatient. I'm not curious. I have no time for your questions. That can be a really harsh experience to walk through the world with. And if that's all you experienced, like some of the Brendas that I have met, then that's what you're going to put out. That's what you experience and that's what you know. Or you are continuing to walk in survival mode and you are continuing to be in a place where you feel like you have to protect yourself. It's a dog eat dog world, right? It's a rat race. So, this is a lot of the mentality that most of us, or many of us, I'm not going to say most, but that some of us walk through the world with. But the problem is, on the lowest level, it does its job. It keeps people at bay. It protects you, on a very basic level. People don't, approach you. But here's the thing. What are you missing out on? Right? What does that keep you from? It keeps you from more positive interactions, more healthier connections from people who are not in a survival mode. People who are in a thriving mode, they're okay with, flow in the conversation and ease and connection and striking up conversations. uh, it also keeps you from really being able to connect the way you probably crave in your relationship. But because the Brendas, right, if there's any Brendas out here listening, because of how you feel like you have to protect yourself with this shell of harshness, it's hard to break that down in a relationship. And it's almost like it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because what happens is you come into the relationship communicating in this harsh way, and it doesn't your partner has his defenses up too. So they're communicating back to you with a similar harshness. And then you feel hurt. You feel like there's no soft place for you, that you can't be vulnerable. But then when you're not vulnerable, your partner responds to you in a way that is harsher, right? Here's the secret, ladies. Your softness is what breaks down the harshness, the masculine male harshness. Now, of course, I am not talking about going out into the world completely unprotected, no boundaries, no discernment, not knowing who to trust, not knowing who to talk to. No, I'm not talking about that. But I can't tell you how many men I have worked with or talked to that share their almost their inner hero response that gets triggered when their spouse, when their wife, their spouse, their girlfriend shows more of her vulnerability. It's almost like it's an unconscious reaction. It's a chemical reaction in some ways, where in order to get more of that protective masculine uh, energy, you have to be able to show a little vulnerability. But that's a bit of a side note, right? Just in general, the soft communication is going to be your gateway to expressing yourself more fully and feeling more heard and understood. Okay. So I kind of went into some of the benefits already. Whenever I talk about a topic and my guests and I talk about a topic, I try to really have you understand the benefits, because I don't want to just tell you, soft communication. You need to understand why. What is the why? What are the benefits? And also what is the science of it? I always feel like that is convincing to a lot of people. So, soft communication helps to reduce conflict because it minimizes misunderstandings. It's not, again, just that one hammer that you're using. Um, and you can resolve conflicts more peacefully. You know, harsh, direct, and to the point, all the time communication leads to more conflict and more harsh conflict. Another benefit is increased empathy. So you are able, the more you show empathy and compassion, that's again, it's reciprocal. That's what you're going to get back. And that is going to make you feel more connected and bonded to your partner because you feel like I'm able to empathize. Find one thing, right? If you're with a person and you can't find something to empathize with, even with your biggest like points of disagreement, then you need to go back to the drawing board because I absolutely do not recommend sleeping with someone, being so intimate in so many ways with someone, and you can't have empathy for something in their experience or what they're going through. So, empathy goes a long way. Improve cooperation. So, it leads to collaboration. I once did a study, a research study. You guys know I love science and research, right? That looked at there's different levels of conflict and resolving conflict. And there is compromise, but what's really more helpful is getting to a place of collaboration. You want to get to a place in conflict or disagreement where both people feel that they've gained at the end, right? You don't want it constantly a dynamic where it constantly feels like, well, she always gets his way or he always this, that, and the other. It should feel like, in some ways, you're able to collaborate. And even if you have to give up some things, right? There's some conflicts and disagreements that two people can't get exactly what they want. Sometimes it's different personality styles. Sometimes it is different ways, like different preferences and different desires. Now, hopefully, you're aligned enough in terms of values, whether small or large, like religion or how you want to raise your kids, right? But there's still going to be disagreements, and you have to understand and learn how to collaborate. Um, just a side note on the values part, I was thinking the other day, I am so glad that when it comes to like certain small things, my husband and I are absolutely on the same page. Like I cannot stand litter. Like when I see somebody just throw something, like they'll be driving a nice luxury car and you just see them throw a bit, a soft drink or a bag from a fast food restaurant and just throw it out on the street. Like I think that is one of the lowest things you could do. Like, and my husband feels the same way. Like we will sit and talk about that. And I know there's some people that are like, what? Who cares? So it's really nice when you have like small things that you align on, but also larger values, and that makes it easier to collaborate and know that sometimes you have to give up some things, and that person knows also that sometimes they have to give up some things. Right? That's part of, as they say, the cost of doing business, like of being in a relationship. The other thing is enhanced intimacy. It helps to increase trust and emotional connection. You feel like, wow, this person, you can feel when someone empathizes with you, right? Or they have compassion for you. And that makes you feel closer to them. That makes you trust them. And even if it's not like conscious, like a lot of the male clients I've worked with that talk about like when their wife will share something vulnerable with them or cry or say whatever, they just instantaneously feel like an increase of wanting to be close to her and wanting to protect her. So it's like it really helps you to increase emotional intimacy, which increases connection. And truth be told, a healthy long-term sexual connection is built it's built on this, right? we're going to get into the ins and outs of that in a future episode. I have a guest to talk about, like, what are the components of how sexual intimacy and emotional intimacy go together in a long-term relationship. But just know that, like, when you're building the foundation of emotional intimacy, you're doing a lot in your relationship. It's like you're making deposits into an account that's only going to grow. I heard a quote at a conference I was at. It was actually the podcast summit, and one of the keynote speakers says, so many of us are withdrawing, taking from our future selves in order to pay for the comforts of our current self. So, the future self we might want, think about the future relationship we want. That might be more of like a harmonious relationship where we can communicate. I can get my needs met, that person can get their needs met. We have trust, we can depend on each other. What are those words we always hear? Loyalty. But you've got to make deposits in order to make that happen. If you come through with the hammer all the time, you're literally taking from that future vision of the relationship you want. And you're pouring into, or you're paying the comforts of your current self. And in relationships, especially conflict, what that looks like is, because I have a feeling, I'm just going to get it off my chest. Or because I feel like um, I'm irritated or angry, I'm just going to get it off my chest. That's called looking at the comforts of your current self without really paying attention to the deposits you need to make into your future self or future version of your relationship. So those are the benefits. There's tons of research, like couples in the Journal of Marriage and Family, couples who they were trained in specific soft communication techniques, and they were able to use those during conflicts. They reported higher levels of satisfaction and stability 6 to 12 months into the relationship, after the study was over, versus couples who weren't trained to use those techniques. Gentle communication, they were able to use specific gentle communication techniques to de-escalate some of the tensions. Like, we know sometimes in a relationship, it can be like a cold war, right? Like either silent treatment or tension, and learning how to use soft communication techniques. One of them being how to repair after what we call a rupture, like after some kind of conflict or tension or like bad feelings. How do you repair? Because it's the repair and the recovery that matter more than the actual conflict that happened. And soft communication helps you to do that. Okay. Also, I like to talk about the Gottmans, John and Julie Gottman. I've read all of their books. I'm actually trained in the Gottman approach for couples. And we know that there's these 4 things that are horrible in terms of relationships and how couples communicate. It's stonewalling, it's defensiveness, contempt, and criticism. So when you're able to do the opposite of those, right, you're laying a foundation for more emotional connection. And one of the outcomes is like you and your partner both. So it works for both. It's beneficial for both, even if only one person starts doing it. It's beneficial where it facilitates more openness and feeling valued by your partner. So the whole empathy part, there was another study in the Journal of Applied Social Psychology, and this is not even a relationship journal. Like they weren't doing this specifically to research relationships. They were just looking at what happens when individuals are able to use more gentle, kind communication, specifically with people that they know. And they found that it helped each partner to understand the other partner's perspective better. So think about when we're trying to communicate, that's usually what we want. But when we have been in what I referred to earlier as like that survival mode, that mode of I don't know how to, I don't know how to take off this hard shell. Sometimes what it feels like is that nobody understands our perspective, or not like truly on a deeper level. And then we shut ourselves off. And then when we do that, our partners tends to feel like we don't understand their perspective. All right. So we always have to have tips. What are some tips? How do you do this? You say, right? I've been a Brenda all my life. I have been so used to communicating harshly and keeping that protective shell up. So you might be saying, what are some tips? One is really practice active listening. Really, that's the curiosity part. What is your partner like? What are they feeling? What are they trying to say? Why are they saying it like this? Let me really be present. Let me put the phone down. Let me stop overthinking in my head and responding to what I think in my head they're saying, and let me be active in listening when they're speaking. Show, like, nod, give eye contact, provide that verbal acknowledgement with that tone. Look, tone of voice can make or break a whole interaction. So show a tone of voice like, okay, oh, I want to hear more. Wow, okay, uh-huh. Yes, I hear you. I understand. Use a tone of voice versus a harsh one. It's like, what? Excuse me? No, right? There's a difference, and those two tones can evoke totally different emotions and responses. Also, again, related to that, speak gently. Use, learn to practice a calm, gentle tone. Now, I know for me, I've been told I have a very soft voice. So it's like sometimes I need to bring my energy up. But there's nothing like a calm, gentle tone to help soothe another person, especially if they are starting to get escalated or activated. And when you're really having difficult conversations and you're trying to understand each other, avoid raising your voice or using harsh language. There should be certain things that are off the table, like cursing a person, insulting them, saying things that you know are hurtful, that are triggers to them, threatening, giving ultimatums, threatening, I'm going to divorce you, I'm going to do this, or if you don't do this, those things are not helpful. Again, try to tap into whatever ounce of empathy that you need to. And you might need to visualize it. You might need to have it, front and first in center, or front and foremost, front and center in your visual, where you can empathize something about your partner, even in this most difficult moment, and validate, and even if it's like, that must be tough for you, like, I disagree with how you're going about this, but it must be really hard, whatever the situation is for them. Okay. Use I statements. This works wonders. It really puts all of the accountability back on you, and it's one of those things that seems simple, but it puts the defenses down. If you really think about it, where we have difficulty in our communication is where one or both people have their defenses up. And so if you can use I statements, what you're saying is, I'm not going to do the blame game. I'm going to find a way to bring it back to me taking ownership of the one thing I can take ownership of, which is my feelings, my reactions, how it impacts me, me expressing how it impacts me. So use I statements. I feel, I need, I observe. You don't want to sound accusatory. Now, there are times when you need to, but let's talk about, again, my example earlier with going to the water department. If I had been accusatory towards this person and she was the key to me being able to resolve this clerical issue, which was going to cause a big headache and money, or not resolve it, like, would accusing her help the situation? Most likely not. But being accusatory, being harsh and direct and all that stuff, it is a quick fix. it would have felt good in the moment, and it would have taken much less emotion regulation and control, but it ultimately would not have served my long-term goal. Okay? And here's a big one. Pause. The power of the pause. The power of the pause. Take a moment to think before you respond. Literally, it could be 3 seconds. Like you could just, someone says something, you feel it, you feel hot in your body, somewhere in your stomach, your heart is racing, something is giving you this reaction that you are ready to go off. And this is for those of you who have kids, you could practice this. This is the perfect situation to practice it with, is with your children. Take a pause. Take a deep breath. Sometimes it's a sigh that gives you that oxygen that you need to think more clearly. Because here's another thing. When we tend to get triggered and we have all of these physical reactions to an emotion that we might be feeling, it's sometimes that part of our brain that can be more rational and help us to regulate our emotions and like inhibit us from doing something we're going to regret later. That part of our brain could go offline a little bit when we're really triggered, because sometimes when we get triggered, we are responding as if we're in danger. And so our focus is on protecting ourselves. So you want to sometimes take a pause, take a deep breath. Put that part of your brain we call the frontal cortex, the prefrontal cortex. Let that get back online and regulate your emotions and make a better decision. I can't tell you, like, think about how many interpersonal conflicts where there's a shooting or somebody gets beat up or something horrible. If someone would have paused instead of reacting, what would the difference have been? So think about, the bar is even lower in your relationship, right? You're not thinking about shooting that person, but sometimes your mouth can shoot bullets. Sometimes your words can be like daggers. And you want to be able to pause and take a moment to think before you respond so that you can get your rational mind back on track. Choose your words more carefully and bring your tone back down. I had a really interesting comment from a man on one of my posts. And I was talking about the power of a feminine woman. And what he commented was, yes, a feminine woman in her communication is very powerful, because when a woman comes at me in a very masculine way, I get triggered and my masculinity increases and we're going toe to toe. And it's going down the wrong road, right? And he wasn't talking about being abusive or anything, but just his approach. And he said, but when, for example, in my home, my wife, she's coming at me with a softer tone, I come down. I'm more reasonable. I'm more willing to listen and compromise. So it's very, very powerful. And the pause is like the first place to start with that. So those are some actionable tips that you can use to start to ease into soft communication. And if you're not used to it, it may take some practice. It's okay. That's what it is. All right. Let's get to some of these questions really quickly. All right. Question number 1. Oh, I like this one. I always say that, don't I? How can I practice soft communication when I'm feeling angry and frustrated? Yes. This is the most important time to practice it. And this is also the most difficult time. It's easy. Well, I'm not going to say it's much easier to be softer when there's not much at stake. It can be a little bit more difficult when you're angry. So again, step back, pause, and breathe. It is going to be so helpful. And remind yourself of that future thing that future version of yourself and your relationship that you're trying to make deposits in. And don't just go for the comfort of getting something off your chest only to regret what you said later. Okay? Question number 2 is, can soft communication be effective in all types of relationships? Absolutely. I gave some examples going down, think about going to the DMV, going down to your municipal office, and you're dealing with workers that may have been like they're exhausted or they've had a bad day. Professional relationships, any kind of work that you do, whether you're a manager or you need to talk to your supervisor, you're talking to customers or you're talking to customer service. Really try to put yourself in the shoes of that other person and what would make it easier for them so that they would want to be able to help you or get whatever outcome it is that you want to get. Okay. And it just helps all around with more meaningful, healthy connections with people. I hope that this has been helpful. This soft communication, we can go into so many different directions with it. And, we can do episodes on just like specifically what to do in the heat of an argument and how to communicate more softly. I go into this in a deeper way in my book, The Boundaries to Bliss Blueprint for Women Who Are Finally Ready to Win at Love. So you can get a copy. The link is in the show notes. This is also something that I just talk to women. We go over, we practice, we do role plays with in my coaching community, the Boundaries to Bliss Society, because it really is the key to enriching your relationships and making them healthier, more fulfilling, and having deeper emotional intimacy. All right. If you have enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, share, leave a review, leave a comment. Thank you so much for being on this journey. Don't forget, you can send me a question. I will answer your questions. And remember, embrace your power, nurture your spirit, and let your feminine essence shine. This is Dr. Nicole, and I'll see you in the next episode.